thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the king, the public weal, peace and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Please be seated. Good morning, everyone. This Honourable Senate for Thursday, November 17th, 2022 is called to order. Before we move ahead, there are 3 senators who have asked to be admitted into this meeting by way of IT, Senators Allen, Morris, and Crawford. I have 3. I got a note from that there will be 3 joining by IT. But I was just trying to ascertain if it is Floyd Morris or Gabriel Morris. Are you able to see? It's Gabriel Morris? Gabriela Morris. So can I get the Senate's approval for that? Those in favor? Aye. Those against, the ayes have it. This morning we also have with us, as you look into the gallery, and I've never seen so many youngsters sitting in the gallery before, but I understand that they are here today really for a tour. So as we are sitting today, they have gotten a tour plus. And they are from Steps Academy. We have with us 50 students from Steps Academy, and Steps Academy is from the parish of St. Anne. And I see several teachers would have accompanied them today, and so we just wish to welcome them, and we're happy to have you, and you will see how the Senate of Jamaica operates, all right? When I was driving into Kingston this morning, there was a lot of rain coming through St. Anne. And so I'm happy that you got here safely. And when you leave and on your way back, ensure that you have your drivers, your responsible drivers, take you home safely. So happy to have you today, Steps Academy. Statements by ministers. Papers. Reports from committees. Notes of motion given orally. Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to sittings of the Senate. Motions for leave to introduce bills, presentation of bills without leave of the Senate first obtained. Sorry. Announcements. Minister, we have to have a recommittal because there seems to have been an error noted on this. Announcements. Can I get a recommittal? And bills brought from the Honourable House of Representatives. Need a recommittal.
Mr. President, might the item on the agenda, announcements, be recommitted?
And bills from the Honourable House of Representatives. Just do both of them.
And the matter of bills
Brought from the Honourable House of
House of
Representatives.
Representatives.
Thank you.
May both be recommitted.
Thank you. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Announcements.
Mr. President, the announcements will be tabled later today in this sitting.
Very well. Bills brought from the Honourable House of Representatives.
The following is a message from the Speaker of the House of Representatives. To the Honourable Senate, I have the honour to advise the Honourable Senate that on the 15th day of November 2022, the House of Representatives agreed to the Senate amendments to a bill entitled An Act to Validate and Confirm the Acts of the National Irrigation Commission Limited, done in good faith by persons acting on behalf of the National Irrigation Commission Limited, and to indemnify the National Irrigation Commission Limited, its agents and its officers against liability for actions done in good faith and for connected matters. Signed, Marisa Dalrymple Philibert, CD, MP, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Public business.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the sole item on the agenda today is the Income Tax Amendment Act 2022, and it is intended to take that at this point in time as we await the announcements page and the documents to be tabled. Mr. President, this bill is in essence a companion to the recently passed Special Economic Zones Amendment Act, recently passed by my colleague Senator Hill, rather piloted through this Senate by Senator Hill. And both pieces of legislation work together to ensure conformity with international standards of tax transparency, as well as improving efficiency in administration of the regime. More particularly, Mr. President, the recent amendment to the Special Economic Zones Act, the CESA, ensured that there are reduced opportunities for revenue leakage locally and shifting of profits internationally. And the amendments being proposed today under the Income Tax Act ensure complementarity of the income tax regime as intended by government policy. So, Mr. President, the government is working hard to ensure that Jamaica is indeed the place to do business, so that before COVID, we know we were well on our way reaping results. We were voted best destination in the Caribbean for doing business, for example, and as at most recent measurement, post-COVID, business and consumer confidence are both at their strongest. And part of this success is, of course, the government's drive to facilitate investments through a strong legal framework supported by various trade agreements and incentives which are aligned with our international obligations. As members would be aware, the Special Economic Zones is a modernized regime replacing the free zone model, and it is designed to allow Jamaica to take advantage of changes in global production and market conditions and to facilitate our participation in global value chains and supply chains. The policy objective, Mr. President, as driven by the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, it has always been to increase the productive capacity of the economy, and the incentives provided within the special economic zones are designed to facilitate their contribution to nation building. The incentives are found across multiple pieces of tax legislation, including the Income Tax Act. But it came to the government's attention, Mr. President, that there were instances in which the legislation, or rather the policy, was not clear or clearly articulated. And accordingly, when there were further international reviews, as all comparable legislation across the world is subject to peer reviews and international reviews by OECD's Forum for Harmful Tax Practices, for example, and the EU. In its most recent review, in the 2020 review, a determination was made that amendments were needed for clarity and in order for the SEZ to be compliant with our international obligations. Those amendments were recently undertaken, and these amendments today now ensure that the Income Tax Act is coherently implemented together with that body of legislation. So we're ensuring that we will improve the administration of the regime by addressing the ambiguities that have been noted. And if I may mention one of the primary incentives provided for in the Income Tax Act is the employment tax credit, which provides business owners the ability to claim credit against income tax payable for their contributions to their employees' statutory deductions. But the CESA legislation had provisions which prohibited entities in economic zones from claiming the benefit. That was addressed, and now the amendment to the Income Tax Act will provide further clarity by widening the scope of the ETC to include businesses under the CESA. So they work in a cycle, ensuring that they support each other. And it will provide clarity to administrators also who function as part of the operation of the regime. So very, very briefly, Mr. President, clauses 2 and 3 allow for the insertion of the word business in respect to the application of the employment tax credit and the treatment of dividends in sections 32A and 38 respectively. This ensures that the entities that offer business process outsourcing can operate in the zones and receive the benefits contemplated by the CESA and the Income Tax Acts when they are taken together. Mr. President, Clause 4 deletes the provisions in the first schedule which references the repealed Free Zone and Free Zones Act. Therefore, both the Tax Administration of Jamaica and the Special Economic Zone Authority can continue to function cohesively as intended by the policy. Both Income Tax and Special Economic Zone Act will be able to support each other. And it is in this context, with this very brief introduction to this very brief bill, that I ask for the Senate's favorable consideration and approval to the amendments proposed to the Income Tax Amendment Act to ensure its harmonization with the aforementioned sections of the Special Economic Zones Act. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister Johnson-Smith. Senator Brown.
Thank you, Mr. President. I seek your permission to speak from a seat other than my own.
and that permission is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. The bill that has brought us here today is really 2 pages. The normal convention is that we would not be sitting today. And the government has taken all of us from our busy activities elsewhere to address a 2-page bill for which clauses 2 and 3 really is about a single word, the insertion after the word trade of business. So not only is it a 2-page bill, but it is about a single word, and of course at clause 4 it requires us to change from Jamaica Export Free Zone Act to the Special Economic Zone Act. And I recall, President, that on the 23rd of September this year,
we dealt with a bill relating to income tax relative to the special economic zone. Then that bill was under the name of the Minister of Industry, Senator Honourable. This one today relating to income tax is under the name of Minister of Finance and Public Service, the Honourable Nigel Clark. And I wonder if the two gentlemen sit in different cabinets. Because if they're in the same cabinet, which must approve bills coming to the Parliament, one would expect that there would be discussion. And if you find that there's deficiency relative to some other tax issues, that those deficiencies, you take a broader look and would pick up these. And my fear, therefore, is this approach to legislation where we are incomplete and we bring what a former senator used to describe as piecemeal approach to legislation. It certainly can't be the proper thing to do. The opposition, however, will not oppose the bill. We'll support it. But we're saying that the process through which Cabinet review legislation needs to be tightened so we don't have to waste parliamentary time and take busy senators away from issues. So if we pay attention to details, then clearly we'll be able to capture this. Mr. President, the Minister of Finance has over and over promised a review of the Income Tax Act. And this is an amendment of that legislation, of the Income Tax Act. I would call on the Minister to hasten the overall review of the Income Tax Act because there are some glaring errors and omissions that policy needs to address. And as we address this issue of the economic zone, I wish to point for the Minister of Finance attention the Income Tax Order of 1971 relating to payments or settlements. I've raised it before that as an income tax matter, I'd like to see it get the same attention as the economic zone is getting, whereby citizens of the country get settlement under the income, but under the Income Tax Act, they are treated, in my view, unfairly. Let me give you an example, because I wish the Minister to, as I've raised with him before, and I've raised it here, to pay attention to it. A worker is dismissed, but for 3 years, they are without a job. They may get an award from the Industrial Dispute Tribunal, or they may arrive at a settlement. But when that money is paid, it is not treated as if payment over the 3 or 4 years. Some employers treat this single settlement as payment for that pay period. Let me give you an example. Somebody gets an award for 50 million. Having been out of work for some time. That award, had it come from the court, would not be taxed. But the employers now tax that award, Minister, as if the 50 million is the payment for the particular month when it is paid. So if he gets it in August, it's going to be treated as August pay and taxed in that way. And no leeway is made for the fact that over time. Now somebody will say, well, at the end of the year, you can go to the income tax department, you can make a claim, you can get the P45 and the P23 or whatever P it has to be. But in the meantime, it takes a long time. So I'm urging, as the minister move on this economic zone amendment, not to wait until the total review, but to address that issue with some dispatch. With that, Minister, President, I'd like to go and do the other business that I'm paid elsewhere to do, and I suspect all of us wish so to do. So on that, we support the amendment, the one word and the one name, and we need not have been here today for that. But the government has brought us here because that's their way of doing things. With that, I hope we can adjourn very quickly, and I see that the announcement have arrived as well.
Thank you, Senator Brown. But it just shows that in legislation, one word can be so important. Thank you.
Thank you,
Senator
Mr. President. That was the very point which I intended to stand to make, that when you exclude an entire sector by virtue of one word, then undoubtedly, especially when that sector has been one of the most resilient in accordance, or rather, as a result of the public sector, or rather, public-private cooperation in ensuring that we implemented nimble and agile policies to ensure that they are able to now be past, Minister Hill, correct me if I'm wrong, pre-COVID employment levels?
Oh yeah, we were 43 in 2019, we're 56 now.
We would have been excluding a sector that has managed to grow beyond its COVID experience. And therefore, it is critical, especially when that sector is responsible for such extensive employment in Jamaica. And we know self-employment is the means for families to be able to take care of each other, to grow communities, and to grow Jamaica. And accordingly, this one word is extremely important. It is in that context, Mr. President, that I ask for a second reading of the bill and that we move to committee. Thank you.
Thank you. The question is that the bill be read a second time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Income Tax Act, read a second time.
No. The Senate will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate to consider bill clause by clause. So it's a short bill, as has been said, and from the comments made on both sides, and in particular from the opposition, they are in support. I take it that we can just take them in block. So clauses 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. I put the title and enacting clause. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? Ayes have it. Question is that I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendments. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendments. Those in favor? Those against?
Mr. President, might I ask for third reading of the bill?
Questions that the bill be read a third time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? Ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Income Tax Act, read a third time and passed.
So we'll have the recommittal to...
Mr. President, might I ask for the item on the order paper for today under the title Announcement, that it also be recommitted?
Thank you. Those in favor? Those against, the ayes have it. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the Senate today are the following. Annual report for e-learning Jamaica Limited for the year 2021-2022. The Jamaica Gazette Supplement, Proclamations, Rules and Regulations, Volume 145, number 266A, dated Tuesday, December 15, 2022, Proclamation number 14, 2022, a proclamation of public state of emergency declared by the Governor General. The Jamaica Gazette Supplement, Proclamation, Rules and Regulations, Volume 145, number 266A, dated Tuesday, December 15, 2022, Proclamation number 15, 2022, a proclamation of public state of emergency declared by the Governor General. The Jamaica Gazette Supplement, Proclamations, Rules and Regulations, Volume number 145, dated Tuesday, December 15, 2022, all these December should be in November 15, 2022, the emergency powers parishes of Clarendon and St. Catherine and specified areas in the parish of Kingston and St. Andrew, Regulations 2022. And the Jamaica Gazette Supplement, Proclamations, Rules and Regulations, Volume 145, number 270, dated Tuesday, November 15, 2022, the emergency powers, parishes of St. James, Westmoreland and Honourable, Regulations 2022. And all the Gazette supplements and the proclamations are dated November 15, 2022.
Thank you. So, public business.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, it is not intended to do any further business today.
All right. There's an intervention that we're having from Senator Sapphire Longmore on Drug Awareness Month.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, it was. Senator.
I did.
Sorry, Senator Longmore. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. I rise this afternoon, or this morning still. Yes, I know a very impromptu sitting that we have had, but I take the opportunity to raise this matter of national importance, which is the awareness, and it is quite ironic that we have some students here with us, very good, important message for them, on the Substance Use Awareness Month, which is being celebrated here in November. And the theme for the month, drug-free lifestyle trending. And if, as any of us might recognize in terms of when we're tackling a substance use issue, it is very critical that the lifestyle that we live is one that seeks to encourage healthy habits. I just wanted to quickly share that there are significant concerns within my professional background and within the health sector in terms of the increasing trends that we're seeing with respect to substance use amongst our children, amongst our young people. And we recognize significantly that a lot of persons tend to turn to substance use. We saw an increased use throughout young adults and men and women likewise in terms of alcohol use during the COVID pandemic. But we also are seeing it anecdotally in terms of increased cannabis use. There is no question that we're seeing more use of Molly or ecstasy as it is called, vaping as a method of administration, edibles, which is where the substance is embedded in something that is ingested. And quite interestingly and a bit shocking personally for me, I was out in Negril recently and talking to some persons there, and they were telling me about increased use of heroin, which is something that we in our profession have thought we probably had passed a certain stage. But what we're recognizing, Mr. President, is that we need to increase and maintain and increase rather, our public education campaign, especially to our at-risk populations, our young people, and persons who have had particularly predisposition to trauma, what we call the adverse childhood experiences. Unfortunately, this is one of the reasons persons turn to substance use, where they're seeking to heal themselves or overcome or even numb that broken spirit that would have been damaged through a traumatic experience. And so we want to encourage really the public education around especially substance use that might be engaged in these groups. Mr. President, just a little reflection. With the alcohol use, 80% of our children claim to engage in alcohol use or are exposed to it before the age of 14 years old, with average onset being between 12 and 13 years old. Marijuana use is recorded at about 13% prevalence amongst our youth, and I think that has gone up since the decriminalization that happened in 2015. Tobacco use at 13%. And so, Mr. President, this is a growing concern, and we encourage the awareness to be maintained, not just in this month. It started out with a church service at the Transform Life Church here in Kingston, St. Andrew. There are a number of school tours that are being engaged throughout the country by the Ministry of Education and Youth, and it will culminate on the 30th at a national stakeholder conference at the Terra Nova Hotel. I encourage us all as best we can to engage in these activities and to maintain this effort of keeping Jamaica as best drug-free as possible. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Longmore. Senator Fraser-Binns.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I want to associate myself to the comment from Senator Longmore, and particularly when she spoke about the need for public education. But I want to go a bit further, and though I do not wear the hat she wears in terms of her training, she will agree with me that to a large extent, what is required is counseling. She mentioned that there has been an increase during the COVID period and therefrom. But I do believe that what is lacking in the country is a medium where persons feel that they can talk about the issues that are affecting them. And we hope that this is something that the government will pursue or continue to pursue. But also, Senator Longmore and Mr. President, is what I believe, and it's not unique to drug abuse, but generally in terms of how we reimagine our society, is that we have to go back to family life. There was a time when we had the extended family to give us support, and I think that helped a lot. I remember, Senator Longmore, when I heard about the prevalence of Molly in our schools, I went home and I sat with my nanny, and I said to her, I want to talk to you about a serious issue, because she has young boys who are in high schools. And I said to her, you need to have that kind of conversation with them so they understand that this temptation is out there and what they should do if and when it comes to them. And I think that is really, and how to avoid it, yes. And I think that is really the kind of communication that we need to have as you talk about public education, but you also have to involve the family, which is very important if we are to stem this. And as I close, Mr. President, I really want to commend the work of the National Council on Drug Abuse. Way back in the days when I did community work, I had the opportunity to work with them, and I know the work that they did. And I believe that it really isn't an easy task. Having appeared before the family court and having to deal with children who would have been exposed to some form of drug abuse, then I understand the impact it has on family, but also on people's future. And I think more institutions that give support to persons who are affected by drug abuse is something that we should encourage.
And with that, Mr. President, as I said earlier, I associate myself with the comment of Senator Longmore, if it pleases you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Fraser-Binns, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank both senators for speaking on what is an absolutely critical issue for our times, for not only our older youth, but our younger children who are here today. The world sometimes can be a scary place, but you should always know that if there's something that's concerning you, something that's pressuring you at home, make sure you speak to that good teacher that you know that you can always tell her or him something. You know, yes, probably the one right there. And if you're having trouble at school, remember that you should be able to talk to an older brother or sister or a parent or even that trusted auntie or uncle about it. But it's always good to share if you're having trouble, and drugs are never the answer. They are just never, ever the answer. They create a new set of problems. So it's very important for us to think about those things. I think this is maybe a really excellent moment for you to have been here today. Not only did you get a very short debate, because sometimes we spend very long hours in here on just one bill and sometimes just one clause, but or one word. But I'm very glad that you were able to hear the message from both of these wonderful female senators who always ensure that important social issues are brought to the floor of the Senate, and that you're able to think about it, and maybe teacher can discuss with you as well on another occasion. So I want to just say thanks again to the ladies for their presentations, and Senator Longmore for raising the issue here on the motion for adjournment. Mr. President, if you would permit me just to make note that sitting today was actually quite important as well beyond the bill, because the proclamations and the regulations which were gazetted on November the 15th in respect of the states of emergency which have been declared in the tri-parish area of Westmoreland, Hanover, and St. James, and in the parishes of Clarendon and St. Catherine, as well as portions of Kingston and St. Andrew, that those have been brought here today. Again, I just want to make the point clear for those members of the public who may have heard concerns expressed regarding the regulations, that they were in fact gazetted on the 15th, the very day. So they were already, judicial notice would have been taken of them from the 15th. We had a small typographical error or two, which were corrected before the printing and circulation. But those, of course, are tabled in the Senate, as they have been on more than one occasion, and they will be placed on the websites of the Ministries of Justice and I believe the OPM. And will they be placed on the parliamentary website as well? At japarliament.gov.jm, so that persons who are interested in reading them, just check the websites later today and they will be there, but they were in fact gazetted on the 15th. I just wanted to make that point clear, Mr. President, as I've heard the comments in the public domain. So thank you very much.
Just to clarify, President, are you saying there are amendments to come to these?
No, clarifying, Mr. President, that these are the documents. There were just some typos that needed to be made before printing so that they were not replicated for the public domain. But they're typos, editorial, not substantive amendments. And with that, Mr. President, it is not intended to do any further business today. Might the Senate be adjourned for a date to be fixed, at which time we will undoubtedly debate matters related to those here today. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Minister. But before I close, and if the youngsters have their pens and their notebooks, you have a pen, notebook, I'm going to give you some information along the line that was presented in relation to the drug awareness. And if you wish to get in touch with someone who you may feel more comfortable with, and not someone who is probably physically in your presence, you can take this information. There's a toll-free line, and I'll go slowly. kids. I'll go very slowly. 888 safe spot. And I will give you, you don't have to write down safe spot. I'm going to give you the numbers that would fit in. So it's 888 723 7768. So that's 888 723 7768. If you're on WhatsApp, and I know that a lot of Jamaicans use their smartphones, including the youngsters, a WhatsApp message can be sent to this number, 876 439 5199. And there's also Instagram or Snapchat and that's at, you know, that little funny marking, at SAFESPOTJA. So that's at SafeSpotJA. All right? You got that? And with that, I will just...
Mr. President, just to also add the National Child Abuse Hotline at 211.
Okay.
211.
So that's another one. So you have got it all today. And I just wish for you a good tour if you have not done the tour, and learn all you can about the Jamaica Parliament and how it works. And when you get back on your buses or transport to get back to St. Anne, as I said, ensure that your driver takes you home safely. So with that said, I will move that the Senate be adjourned for a date to be set. Those in favor? And I am certain there is none against. The ayes have it. This Senate is now adjourned. Thank you.